Inspiration. Sahara TV. They get mouth. They get mouth.
Hello, viewers. This is Sahara TV out of New York City. My name is Omoyele Shore. As part of our show today, we're discussing the country Mali. That's a country that has been known to be peaceful and being in some kind of democracy over these years, just suddenly under attack from so-called Islamic militants. The story as we stand today is that former colonial masters led by France and of course Nigeria and several other West African countries from ECOWAS have gathered troops that are massing on Mali. And as we promised, we want to discuss this with scholars, and we also like to hear your views at some point. I just want to let you know that we have Professor Horace Campbell on the line with us. Professor Campbell is a noted international peace and justice scholar, and also he's the chair of the he's a professor of African American Studies and Political Science at the Syracuse University in Syracuse, upstate New York. He has a book coming out, he says, it's called Global, NATO, and Colossal Failure in Libya, and the book will be out in March. Professor Horace Campbell, you're welcome to Sahara TV.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Let's go into this directly. What do you think is happening in Mali? Why is the world, suddenly interested in Mali, and how do you think we got here? Because, apparently now France has been bombing Nigeria, sent troops over there, and there's been a lot of responses all over the world, and people need to understand this, and that's why we have you on our show today.
Well, I think your viewers should remember that it was 2 years ago that African politics changed with the revolution in Tunisia and in Egypt. With these two revolutions in Tunisia and Egypt, we had counter-revolution in Libya. The Western financial speculators, along with their army, that was called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, called NATO, used the expedient of responsibility to protect to invade Libya and destabilize the country, creating a situation with militias and eventually executing the president, Muammar Gaddafi. Mali and South Africa are two countries in Africa that have a very strong, what they call civil society. That is, people in Mali are organized at different levels, in trade unions, in youth groups, student groups, women's organizations, cooperative, Islamic organizations, and they have been active since 1992 to change the political process in Mali. Now, in the context where South Africa and Mali have this tradition of people organizing to defend their livelihood, the Western countries are afraid of the potential that the ideas of revolution that came from Tunisia and Egypt, that those ideas cascade and spread across Africa as they will. There's nothing to stop the revolutionary momentum, because the revolution is calling for one thing. The people of Africa want a better quality of life. The people of Africa want the resources and wealth of Africa to change their standard of living. The people of Africa want unity and reconstruction of Africa, and the people of Africa want peace. So if you listen to the Malian people today, the most important Malian singer, a woman, came out with a new song calling for peace and say that peace can come from the people of Mali. Now, here we have a situation where the worst imperialists in relationship to Africa for the past 100, nearly 180 years. France invaded Algeria first in 1830. France has been involved in a brutal war against the Algerian people when they fought for independence. France assisted in destabilizing Africa with the Congo. France has supported military dictatorships all over Africa. How could France suggest to people that they are in Africa to help Africa? That's something Africans will not accept. However, Africans are put in a very difficult situation because the jihadists who destroyed one of the most important cultural centers in Africa, Timbuktu, these jihadists have been financed by the United States of America for the past 10 years under the so-called Pan-Sahel Initiative. And the United States of America, their Africa Command, financed these jihadists to overthrow Gaddafi. So Africans were caught in a trap. What do you do against these jihadists? Can ECOWAS send troops to fight beside France, which is a bigger enemy than the jihadists? These are real problems, and these problems require clarity, organization, and political mobilization for peace in Africa. It cannot be short term and be driven by the Western propaganda about what's going on in Mali.
Thank you, Professor. You have just laid out what happened and how we got here. But it's also important going forward how you suggest or how do Africans, with the kind of leadership in Africa that led to the revolution in Tunisia and Egypt, the kind of leadership we have in Nigeria that's been engaged in corruption and the looting of the Commonwealth, in several other African countries where there have been dictators and have refused to allow the civil society you mentioned exist in Mali and South Africa to flourish, how do we also trust these internal colonialists? Are they not bigger enemies in some cases to Africans than even the Western countries who have financed and supported and sometimes help them hide their loot in their various vaults?
No possibility.
Yeah.
No possibility. Most of these African exploiters that you mentioned,
yes,
they would not be able to stand on their own 2 feet without the support of Western military and financial institutions.
that's correct.
So what we saw in the Congo in 1997 was that after 32 years, Mobutu, that was supposed to be this strong person, was one that collapsed overnight. Now, the Mali situation, I cannot be very, very simplistic. It's a complex situation. And as the French say, it's a complex operation. But that complexity should not have us take our eye off the number one question. That is, this matter cannot be solved militarily. It has to be solved politically by the organization of the people of Mali to isolate these people, and ECOWAS must come in to support the people of Mali, and we must call for the withdrawal of French troops from Mali. That is the bottom line. ECOWAS must be the main force. And in my view, this attempt by France to intervene in Mali is to lay the foundation to bring the United States into a war to further militarize Africa, because France on its own cannot afford a military operation in Africa at this particular historical juncture. There's a financial crisis. And for France to continue fighting, it needs the support of the European Union and the United States of America. Well, the European Union is bankrupt. We have heard a telephone conversation between the French President Hollande and the British Prime Minister Cameron that was very instructive. He was calling on the British to give more support. The Europeans do not have the financial or military wherewithal to intervene in Africa at this particular moment. Therefore, they need the United States and the United States Africa Command. But the United States Africa Command created the conditions for what we are seeing in Mali today. One, $500 million were spent in the last 10 years through what was called the Pan-Sahel Initiative. Number two, what's happening in Mali is a direct result of the destabilization of North Africa and the war in Libya. Number three, the United States Africa Command was discredited when its ambassador was killed in Benghazi because it was aligned with militias, the same militias and jihadists that they are financing to fight in Syria. And the United States Africa Command is under review because the progressive African scholars are calling for the dismantling of AFRICOM. Now, if AFRICOM and the United States gets involved in this war in Africa, it will create a situation where we will have to mobilize even greater in the United States of America. And lastly, this is about Nigeria. Nigeria is a giant and powerhouse in Africa. The attempt by the Wahhabists, that is the conservative Islamists, to destabilize Nigeria is part of the plan of imperialism to make Nigeria weak. They have failed so far. They may kill a few people through what is called Boko Haram, but the Nigerian people since 1970 made a commitment that there will never be another civil war in Nigeria that killed 3 million people. And the Nigerian revolution, which now requires political organization, mobilization, and education from the Nigerian people to root out the corrupt elements in Nigeria, is at the heart of the unification of Africa, bringing one currency for Africa, one freedom of movement across Africa. So this invasion of Mali has complexities that we have to be very clear about. And that is why we have to be tactical to say the United Nations Security Council must call for the withdrawal of France from Mali and give support to ECOWAS to fight the jihadists there.
Wow. Professor Horace Campbell, that's all the time we have for you, but it's important to mention that you have struck at the heart of something that is important to us on this show and our listeners and those watching us. You have said that Nigeria needs a revolution, and it looks like they know that Nigeria is on the path to a revolution that will root out the corrupt elements that have held Nigeria down. And this could also be linked to what we are seeing now, maybe to slow down the momentum. And I think it's a very, very deep and fundamental submission that you have made there. And we appreciate your coming onto the show. We want to remind our viewers that you have a book coming out named Global NATO and Colossal Failure in Libya, and you said this will be out in March. So we'll be on the lookout for it, and you trust I will bring you back on our show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Viewers, it's been Professor Horace Campbell. He joined us from the University of Syracuse University in Syracuse, upstate New York. And do not go away, because we're going to be joined by another journalist by the name Andy Morgan, and he writes for the UK Guardian, to give us an idea of what he thinks is going on in Mali. By the way, you should know that there's some other events already linked to the Mali attack today. Nigerian troops traveling in 3 luxurious buses were ambushed in Kogi State, central Nigeria, by militants who hauled improvised explosive
Welcome back to Sahara
grenades,
TV.
on their
With me here is
convoy,
Samuel
and killed 2
Leshore.
soldiers
Before
and
we
4
left
them are
out, we
injured
were
and
talking
hospitalized
about
as we
how the
speak.
church is
And also earlier today, the Emir of Kano was attacked by gunmen in Kano on his way from a Quranic recitation event in Kano, and his driver, 4 of his bodyguards, and his oldest son was also killed. So do not go away. We're going to give you updates on developments both in Nigeria, in other parts of Africa, including the African World Cup going on now, African regional cup going on in South Africa, AFCON 2003, as we have information. As a matter of fact, I've been told that the first match between the country South Africa and Cape Verde ended in a draw, 0-0. So do not go away. We'll be back, and it's Sahara TV out of New York City, live, reaching you.